What's up, buddy? Welcome to a really early episode of this Uncanny Earth. We got a very special guest today, Mr. John Stasko, and he's going to be joining us momentarily. I just want to say hello and good evening to all of you out there. Eyed Cabbage is here. Hello, Eyed Cabbage. Welcome, welcome. With no further ado, let's go ahead and get into this thing. Welcome to our guest, John Stasko. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm trying to beat the heat, but I'm up in the park relaxing.
Yeah, it was hot here today too. We had like 92, 93-degree temperatures. Um,
Right.
so for those of you that don't know, I've been trying to get John on the show. We've been playing cat and mouse, telephone, back and forth. Um, going through events and things like that. So finally, he is here. I'm very excited to talk with him. John, tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is you do.
Well, I've been a paranormal investigator for 56 years. I've
Hmm.
investigated over 5,000 different types of paranormal cases, everything from UFOs, Bigfoot, hauntings, ghosts, demons, Mothman, all types of cryptids, abduction cases, possession cases, pretty much the whole gamut. You know, I'm a retired paralegal, so I'm a very skeptical man. Out of the over 5,000 cases I've investigated, I've debunked about 80, almost 80% of them. The other 20% I kind of believe are real based on the information I've received and the type of investigation I do. Uh, but as I know I'm kind of well known right now as the guy who's seen Bigfoot 4 times. But my primary interest when I first got into the paranormal field was about UFOs. I will, without further ado, I'll say this. I am an abductee. I've been an abductee since I was at least 5 years of age. I have 2 scoop marks on my body. For those of you unfamiliar with scoop marks, it's a typical sign of somebody who's abducted. I've been under 2 hypnotic regressions to confirm what I had seen, what I had gone under, as long also with my co-investigator at the time. I've seen UFOs 10 times in my life. Recently, I was with Dan Benoit, Julie McQuaid. We went on an investigation of a Bigfoot, supposedly, or a Punkwudgie down by Mingo Park. We found a 16-inch long footprint, but we didn't see a Bigfoot. But what we did see, and which I believe Dan photographed, were 2 UFOs hovering close to Mingo Park. So that was the 10 that I've seen. I want to say this too. Probably the most interesting one I saw. I started when I was 5 years of age with my father, who was a chief of police where I live. And I saw a UFO about the size, I guess, 100 feet in diameter, white in color. And what's really strange about this is my dad had me by the hand. We were standing outside, looking on this great big like slate dump. And I said, "Look, Daddy, look at that." And he says, "Don't worry about it. It's nothing." I thought that kind of strange years later because my dad was a heck of an investigator. I learned a lot of my techniques in investigation from my father.
Right.
Anyhow, so that's when I got my first scoop mark on my right ankle, inside of my ankle. Anyhow,
Now, real quick, don't mean to
yeah.
interrupt you, John. Could you tell the people, and especially myself, because I've never heard of what a scoop mark actually is. Could you tell the people what that is actually?
Well, what it is, what we believe it is somehow when you're abducted, they take and they'll put some kind of device on your vein. Like mine's
Mhm.
directly on a vein right here on my right wrist, the second one, and same thing on my right ankle. And whatever, when I was under hypnosis, they told me basically they saved my life. I don't believe it. I think they were just doing whatever they do, and I'll get to that in a minute. But what are they? They're a squarish kind of a mark. I mean, I've had doctors look at this. I don't do drugs, I don't smoke, and I very seldom drink. Okay, so the doctors don't know what this is. It damaged my vein on my right hand and on my ankle. Okay, the second one I got on my right hand when I was 39 years old and taken. Okay, but that's what a scoop mark is. I
Okay.
also have, I believe, an implant in my upper abdomen right here. When I had a scan done of it, it showed a solid object in there, but I didn't want to have it removed. But it's solid. It's not metallic, but it's some type of material that's in there. I think it's kind of ceramic in nature. I don't know, but I know people out there are going to say you're full of baloney, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Listen, I'm going to be 72 in August. I don't care what people think. If I
Right.
did, I wouldn't be
Right.
doing this.
Right.
Okay, because until you see these things for yourself, you can be as skeptical as you want. But once you see these things, your whole perception of reality changes, as does your outlook on life. Okay. I don't I see a lot of shows, and I admired a lot of these astronomers. And by the way, that's my primary hobby, astronomy. But that say that aliens wouldn't come here because it's so far of a distance. I got news for you. They already made the trip. Okay, they made the trip. They've been here. Going back into prehistory, cavemen have put like writings on walls,
Right.
petroglyphs, and things of this nature. The Anunnaki, with that story about them and the Sumerians, the Aborigines in Australia, South America, Europe, everywhere. They draw what they saw. Okay, so these things have been around for who knows, thousands, if not millions of years. Anyhow, let me just say this. Uh, I also am a cancer survivor. Now, I got to tell you something. This is no particular order, but May 30th, 1990, I was taking my first wife, who was pregnant with our third child, and my two other children in the back seat of my Jeep on a place called California Ridge Road. Here comes the wind again. Anyhow, I always carry a camera with me, and I have the pictures to prove what I'm about to say. So my Jeep I got to the high point of this ridge, and I'm showing my kids the constellation. It was a moonless night. It was really nice. May 30th, 1990, 9 p.m. Anyhow, so my wife says, we know what those are, John. What's that behind us? Now, keep in mind, I'm on the high point of the ridge. The light that we saw 300 feet away was down lower behind some trees. Well, my first thought's what? It's another off-road vehicle like mine. I had 13 off-road lights on my vehicle, okay, because I like to go off-road back then. Well,
Right.
here's the thing. It started doing this, raising behind the trees. Two bright lights. They were so bright through the trees, I couldn't even look at it from over 300 feet away, brighter than any aircraft landing light. It cleared the trees, and it was so bright again, I'm doing this, and I'm blocking it. I get out of my Jeep. I start walking back toward it. I walk 75 feet. The reason I know these exact measurements, because I measured the next day. Anyhow, now it starts coming toward me real slowly. I can't see what's making these lights, though. So by then, my wife, who's pregnant, and my two children are screaming, "Get back in the Jeep! Get back in the Jeep!" They're livid. They're in terror. I apologize to them later because I have to know everything. Anyhow,
Right.
so it gets close to me, and at this point, it was maybe 30 feet away. I raised my camera like this, and I hit the flash. When I did, the lights went out in front. There were two bright lights, and in front of me, right above me, at this point, maybe 15 feet away, it stopped, was an orange hemispherical dish, approximately 50 feet in diameter. Okay, now I walk, I get almost underneath of it. Excuse me. And my wife says, I look like I was getting bathed in orange light like this, coming down, like almost like a mirage. I could feel heat. Now I'm wearing a baseball cap. I always carry a baseball cap like this to wear. I had this on and a t-shirt and jeans, like I always do. All right. Anyhow, so I'm feeling this heat, but I'm not thinking nothing. I'm in just awe of this thing. I'm not afraid. Okay. It tilts down in front of me like this. And as it does, I can see two sets of landing gear, not your typical tripod landing gear like you would think, three things,
Right.
but like look like this, like two sets of fingers going up into the edge. Then it tilted forward like this, maybe at this point 15 feet above me. And in those windows, I saw there were three windows. Two that were about this size, maybe 2 feet, one on either side, and a larger one in the middle, maybe 4 feet. Not round, but almost like sort of oblong. In those windows, and I don't care who believes me because I'm going to say it like it is, were four beings. A small one in this one, a small one in this other small window, and two in the middle window. They were the grays.
Mm.
Now here's the thing: three of them were the same size, with the black eyes and the dark gray skin. That's what it is. And but the one in the middle was taller than the other one it was standing with, maybe by a head. It was lighter in color. So when it tilted down, it was like this. What do you think I did? I started snapping pictures. I got 7 pictures of this thing. 7.
Oh.
Now, up close and personal. Now, here's the thing. After that, here's what I did. I went like this, and I waved at them. They waved back like this with 4 fingers, really long, maybe this much longer than my fingers. Then it tilted back up like this, and in a blink of an eye, 300 feet away over some trees. But instead of moving in a smooth, I ran back to my Jeep. But instead of moving in a smooth movement like this, it was doing this, jerking. Okay. Now this whole time there was no sound. So when I ran back to the Jeep, the ridge is real windy. I jumped in my Jeep and I started trying to keep up with this thing. By air, it was probably going 30, 40 knots. I had to go 60, 65 mile an hour to keep up with it because of the windy road. I came down around the turn and it disappeared over a high tension line. Now, at this point, I'm feeling all this heat and stuff, and my wife and children were livid. So I took them down to my brother Ralph's house. Now, you remember those big camcorders they used to have, those great big ones?
Oh yeah. Oh
Well,
yeah.
my brother Ralph, he had a big one like that. So I told him what happened. He said, "Well, I got 3 fully charged batteries. We're going to go back up her." So we went up with his Chevy Blazer. We go up there and we didn't see one UFO. We saw 3. One up here, one here, and one to the other side in a triangular formation. He starts filming. We got 5 seconds of film. The first battery dies. He puts another battery in, 3 seconds of film, the battery dies. He puts the third battery in, it just dies, and the lights go out on the vehicle. Then the one at the top went straight up. The other 2 went to the left and right. So then we went back down to his house. On the way, Ralph said, "Your skin's coming off." Everywhere where my hair was exposed and my skin was exposed, skin was coming off. He said, "We got to get you to the hospital." I said, "What are you going to tell him?" "You said you can't tell him you got zapped by a flying saucer." I said,
He
I'll
definitely
tell him
can't
I
say
fell,
that.
right. I'll tell him I fell asleep under an ultraviolet lamp or something. So we go to his house. Then he takes me up to the old Brownsville General Hospital here in Fayette County. And I'm waiting, and the doctor comes out, and they take me in. And he said, "What?" And he says, "What happened, Mr. Stasko?" I says, "I fell asleep under an ultraviolet lamp." He took a look at my energies, tilted his head like this, said, "You're sticking with that story?" I said, "Yeah." Anyhow, so he bandaged me up. I went home. The next day I called my co-investigator, Devin, he's a big guy. I'm 6 foot. Well, you know how big I am. I'm 6'4".
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Devin's 6'6.5", 660 pounds. He's a nuclear engineer for Bettis. He's a
Phew.
radioactive expert. Now, yeah, I'm a big guy, but he's even bigger than me. Now, at that time, I was a site supervisor for an environmental company, so I had all kind of training in environmental issues. So we go back up to the site the next day with 2 Geiger counters with full radiation gear on and red in the badges, right? We go up to where it was behind the trees on the ground. Now, I have something called a soil compaction device. It measures the weight of something based on the imprint it puts in the ground. Well, anyhow, I'm getting ahead of myself. When we started walking into the circle that was on the ground, our Geiger counters went off the scale.
Yeah.
Our badges turned immediately red. We dropped one of the Geiger counters and backed out quickly. It indicated at least 150 times higher than background radiation. So as we stood there, we watched, and after about an hour, it started dropping down. Finally, it went all the way down. And then we went into the circle. We found 2 sets of imprints where it rested on the ground. Okay. Now the plants were melted around that area. Now it's raining here. Anyhow, no rain was in the forecast. But
Right.
anyhow, yeah. Anyhow, so I used to belong to Stan Gordon's group, PASU, Pennsylvania Association for the Study of the Unexplained. So I went back and I told Stan about this. So we got together with about 12 or 13 other investigators, and we decided to go up on the ridge for a stakeout. Now we go up there as a police officer, a couple psychics. Everybody that's in the group at the time was a professional, everybody. So we have everybody up at this cemetery in the back of an old cemetery. I know it's not quite kosher to do this, but it overlooked a valley, so we had a good view of everything. So a woman with me named Evelyn Sherman got in my Jeep. She used to work for Channel 2 News as a reporter. We drove along the ridge, which is 4.5 miles long, and we started coming back. And she spotted another identical one over the top of a barn. Now this area is pretty much, at that point, was devoid of homes and such. Oh my, now it's really coming down. Anyhow, so I hope you can hear me through this rain.
Yeah. No, you're fine.
But anyhow, so I got the 7 pictures of this. Now, the object, we had all kind of electromagnetic field detectors and stuff, but the object disappeared after that. But we had a rash of sightings at this point. But I have the 7 pictures. Now, let me move ahead. Do you remember the movie Fire in the Sky, Travis Walton's story?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I sure do.
Paramount Pictures contacted our group to ask us for an endorsement of that movie. In return, we could do a display up in Monroeville, PA, and put our stuff out there. And we went to see the movie early. Well, we had the display out in the lobby, and I had these 7 pictures there, and people were offering me up to $5,000 a piece for these pictures. I refused to sell them. I also had the film, by the way. So, I mean, they're unretouched, period. When you see them, I'm going to bring them to any event I go to from now on.
Yeah, I'd definitely
But
like to see him myself. I mean,
yeah,
this is
well, I
kind of
can
stuff
send
that
you.
I'm into.
Actually, I can send you a copy through Messenger, but I'll send you a
Please,
copy
please.
through Messenger. But you'll be amazed. But I'm again, no particular order. Back in I believe it was 1968, on Christmas break, all I wanted for Christmas from my father was a set of walkie-talkies, powerful ones. Being my dad was a police officer, he bought them for me and stuff. But he worked from 3 to 11 that night. So I'm outside talking to my friend in a place called Long Branch, and I'm facing this hillside with a big barn on top of it. Anyhow, wow, it's really coming down here. But anyhow, for some reason I ducked, and when I looked up, this object shaped like this came right over top me and stopped right above the hillside. Now I estimate its size, and I know this is going to sound crazy, big as a battleship, about 800 feet long by 500 feet wide, glowing like a fluorescent type light. Okay, underneath I could see the appendages hanging down from it. It hovered over him for approximately 30 seconds. Okay, and ejected what looked like a giant teardrop about 150 feet long into the hillside, which swung down like this into the hillside. Then it zipped away. Well, I was shocked. So I go in the house. Like I said, I was a little guy back then. I was barely 5'8". I walked in and my mom said, "You look like you've seen a ghost. What happened?" And I told her. She said, "Well, you're staying up till your dad comes home." So anyhow, so my dad came home and I told him what happened. I said, "Dad, let's go up there tonight." He goes, "No, we're going to go up tomorrow, John." Now, I didn't tell anybody else about this. My dad knew, my mom knew, my brother Frank knew, and that's it, and myself. So we go up there the next day, and the whole hillside's torn up by whatever came down and hit into that hillside. To this day, nothing grows there. But listen to this. So I go back to school. Now, at the time, I was wanting to go to college and stuff, which I did eventually. But back in those days, Bob, they didn't have like these security procedures in place where you had to check in and everything else.
Right.
Recruiters were coming to the school. Remember, I graduated in 1970, and they just come into the school and they'd ask to see a student, and the teachers or whatever would say, "Yeah, well, you can talk to them." Well, anyhow, my principal, whose name at the time was Strickler Pollock, he's a heavy-set guy. He said, I was in study hall. He said, "Johnny, 2 men are here to see you." I said, "Okay." So I'm thinking they're recruiters. So they said, "Use the front home room where you're at, because there's nobody in here right now. It's right in front of the school." So I go in there. There's 2 guys standing there. Now listen to this. My one and only incidence of this. These guys were dressed in black suits, white ties, or white shirts, black ties, black shiny shoes, black hats, and wearing sunglasses. Pale complected, about 5'10" or so each. I'm thinking they're recruiters. I don't know any better. I was a young dumb kid. So they started asking me about what I saw that night. Remember, I didn't tell anybody.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Then they started threatening me, saying, "If you tell anybody what you saw, we can put you in jail for the rest of your life, hold you incommunicado." I didn't even know what the word meant at that time. Okay. Then he started saying, we can put your family in jail or put you all to death. Well, around this time, my homeroom teacher come walking by, and the door was open to the room. He says, he saw my consternation. He says, "Johnny, what's going on?" I said, "These guys are threatening me." So he walked into the room and he towered over me. He was a football coach too. He was 6'5", about 400 pounds. He said, "What are you doing to this young boy?" And they didn't say nothing. Now, during the conversation I had with him, if you want to call it that, one would start talking, the other one would finish the sentence like they were the same person. Okay. When he said that to them, they looked at each other, didn't say a word, and walked past him, started going out to the front of the school. So then Pete told me, "Get behind him," and we started walking out to follow him. They went out the front of the school, got in a Lincoln Continental, a black one, with Air Force plates on the back, got in and took off like their pants were on fire. Okay. Now, that's my only meeting with the men in black. Okay, but it was documented. Okay, that was all documented. I had witnesses. I had the high school principal at the time, and Pete Petroff, okay, the coach. So, but I told my dad about it, and we looked for weeks to try to find out more about him. Couldn't do it. Now, moving ahead, we got a call from the Uniontown Police, Devin and I, through our group, that their UFO was seen over a place called Census Technologies at the bottom of Summit Mountain. Now, this is wintertime. So we decided to go up there in my Jeep, go to the top of the mountain near some, not right under, but near some microwave towers that are up there with telescopes and our gear to look down into the valley down below where Uniontown is. Now we drive up to where Jamonville is. I don't know if you're familiar with Jamonville.
I know where Uniontown is, but I'm not familiar with Jamonville.
Well, Jamonville is a church camp for kids, and at the top of the mountain, this is the second tallest mountain in the state, is a 60-foot tall cross. Okay. So you can see it for like 20, 25 miles from there. Okay. Anyhow, so we pull in. Now, this is wintertime, mind, just around 11 o'clock at night or so. And as we pull in, there's a truck sitting there, and it's camouflaged with the camo paint and everything on it, with the lights off. So, I mean, I thought that was kind of strange. Now, it snowed up there. So we drove by real slow because we were going to set up further down the road, facing down into the valley. And I had this odd feeling. There was two guys sitting in this truck. So I pulled up and I said to Devin, I'm going to pull off into the woods here. I have a bad feeling. He said, what for? I said, that truck back there. So I pulled off into the woods with my Jeep. About 2 minutes later, here comes this truck with its lights off, passed. Kept going. That's kind of spooked us a little bit, but we were determined. So we go up there and we set our stuff up, and we're looking down the valley. Maybe 20 minutes later, I hear a helicopter. It's a moonless night. It's kind of overcast, okay, but we can see down into the valley. Anyhow, so I hear this helicopter. So I had what's called a Q-beam. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a big round spotlight like this, 500,000 candle power with a portable power pack. I shine my light up in the air, and I caught this black helicopter with its side doors open, running with no lights on. On the ground below it, with no lights on, was a dark blue or black Lincoln Continental, followed by two Humvees and two Army trucks coming from the opposite direction. That kind of spooked us. Now, there's running with no lights on. Helicopters don't run with no lights on, and no black helicopters supposedly at that time existed. So we packed our stuff up and decided to go the opposite direction. Now, everybody says there's no base up on that mountain. I beg to differ. I think we found one. We drove down the road the direction they came, and we found a set of tracks going in through a gate into what looked like an underground bunker, which is still up there, by the way. And you could see the tire tracks coming out because remember I said it snowed. So next day, Devin and I decided we're going to go to there's a reserve base up there in Connellsville. We wanted to go up and talk to the person in charge of the base and ask him about this black helicopter. So we got permission and we got on the base. We actually talked to a lieutenant colonel, and we told him we're paranormal investigators, UFO investigators and such. And he was laughing about it. Everything was kind of easy going at that point. After I said to him, I said, I have asked you a question. I said, where do you keep your black helicopters at? His whole demeanor changed. He looked at us and he talked to this, I guess it's an Army, or not Army, it's a Air Force sergeant wearing blue, like a light blue shirt with the stripes on it. He said, escort these two gentlemen off the base. Now, look, after that, we had black helicopters over my house in broad daylight with the whole town I lived in saw. We had them all over the place, okay, broad daylight. And at nighttime, our phone at the time, this is before the advent of cell phones, our phones seemed like they were being tapped. We had to come up with a code just to talk to each other. Anyhow, you wanted to talk about abductions now, okay? That's just a smattering of the UFOs I've seen in my life, all with multiple witnesses, every one of them.
If I may interrupt for just a brief second.
Sure.
What was so special about your town that these UFOs were there? Was there like a significant amount of like mining resources? Because I know a lot of times whenever there's a large government presence and then a large UFO presence, there's usually a couple reasons for that. One of them being there's a mineral or something that they can take from that area. Sometimes it's people. Sometimes they'll swoop in, they'll take people, and they'll do studies and things of that nature. Because what I find fascinating is the idea of the black helicopter being there And when you shined your light on that black helicopter, did they recognize you? Did they try to come after you or anything like that?
No, not at that time, no. But the thing is about it, I mean, I know for a fact there's a group in the military called the Night Stalkers. And what they do, they've been seen in conjunction with retrieving downed alien craft, okay? Or in close proximity to flying UFOs or ones that have landed on the ground or whatever. If you remember the Cash Landrum case, where they were exposed to like a lot of radiation,
Mhm.
there were black helicopters all around this thing. Okay. Well, anyhow, where I lived at the time, there were a lot of mines. There was also power stations all around that area. We had a rash UFO sightings around that area. Now, let me say this: Devin and I, we got it in our heads to keep going up on this ridge. Every weekend we go up on this ridge and we look for things, whether it be UFOs or Bigfoot or whatever. This ridge is 4.5 miles long, but it's got a lot of history to it. It's got a lot of history of Bigfoot sightings and UFOs. And a kid was murdered up there many years ago. They never did solve that case. Okay, he was raped and burned alive in a barrel.
Mm.
Okay, so there's a lot of stuff going on up here. But anyhow, so I'm not afraid of anything. I mean, but anyhow, so Devin and I go up there, and we're sitting there one night, and I don't like mustard, just so you know. I'm telling you this for a reason. Okay. So we're sitting in my vehicle, and Devin says, "John, do you want a sandwich?" I said, "Well, what kind do you have?" He says, "It's a bologna sandwich." I said, "What's on?" He goes, "Mustard." I said, "Well, I'll eat it later on." It was in a plastic bag and soft. There's that thunder and lightning. Anyhow, so I set it on my dash, and Devin says, "Look over there to my left, about I'd say 500 feet away, were three orbs like above the ground, hovering there." That's the last thing we remember.
Hmm.
That's the absolute last thing we remember. About 2 hours later, we came to our senses and totally disoriented. We didn't know what happened. Now, I drove back to California to get some gas. He got in his vehicle, went home, but we were really messed up. So we went to our meeting up at Stan's house in Greensburg, and we told him what happened. So he arranged to have hypnotic regression done on us both. Now, I've never had an anxiety attack in my life about anything. So my wife and I drove up. Devin was already there. He had undergone hypnotic regression. I panicked. I couldn't do it at that time. So they set up another day, and I went up. They started filming this and videotaping it. And the woman that was doing it at the time, a professional hypnoregressionist, after we got done doing this, it took them a while to get me under. I guess I have a really strong will. She said she would never do this again because she terrified of what I told her under hypnosis. So they set up another one. And the man that did it was a retired city of Pittsburgh forensic uh, psychologist. He's a professional. He's done it for 30 years. His name's William Duffy. He lives in McMurray, PA. So I went up with my sister-in-law and my wife at the time, and it took a while to get me under again. He did all kind of tests to make sure I wasn't faking, you know. And when he got done after a 2-hour session, which we have the tape of, he said he's the genuine article. Okay. Now I want to say this too. Remember I told you I stood under this UFO?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I ended up getting cancer from this. Okay. I fought cancer for 8.5 years. I ended up going to Hillman Cancer Center here in Washington, PA. And it just so happens that my doctor, Doherty at the time, the oncologist, said he was also a UFO witness. He told me I was exposed to some kind of ionizing radiation. I fought cancer with 6.5 years of chemo, and I got 56 doses of radiation. No one's ever survived getting that many doses to kill this cancer in me. They actually bought me a t-shirt that said he's Superman. So I survived it and I beat the cancer. But it destroyed the radiation that I had, destroyed my right hip, which I had to get replaced, and all my teeth. These are false. Okay. Not fun. My hair grew back and everything else. My skin to this day is kind of messed up looking. But anyhow, so these are now I've been on abduction cases too where I talk to people. Now, not far from that ridge area, which is called California Ridge Road, we got a group call from a lady through Stan who said she was an abductee. Now, I've had a lot of missing time in my life.
Right.
I don't drink like that, and I don't do drugs like that. Okay. Anyhow, so don't know why I had all this missing time, but it all came up under the 2 regression sessions that I had. And I'll tell you what I was told under hypnotic regression and what I told them in a minute. But I got to tell you about this lady. Anyhow, so we got a call from about this lady in a place called Low Hill, PA, which is about, I'd say, maybe 5.5 to 6 miles away from that ridge. And she claimed she was an abductee. So Devin and I go down in my Jeep, and he got out first to meet her outside. It's the summertime. And she was talking to him and everything else. Her husband didn't want to come out because he didn't want to be put. A lot of people they don't want to get involved in this kind of stuff, as you know.
Right.
Okay. By the way, if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to interject at any time. I know you do. But anyhow, so when I got out of the vehicle, she turned white. Her face blanched. And it took about 20 minutes for she to even talk to me. And when I finally asked her what happened, she says, "I know you." I went, "What?" She goes, "You were with them." What are you talking about? She said, "You were with them when they took me. You were helping them. You told me to be calm. You were calming me when they took me." I've never met this woman in my life. Okay. So apparently, anyhow, so keep that in mind. She told me the story, what they did to her and things of this nature. Okay. Now, let me tell you under what I related under hypnosis. I know I respect Whitley Strieber very much for his story in coming out when he wrote the book Communion.
Right.
But he believes these creatures are benevolent. They are not. They lie. They lie. Okay. Why would they tell us anything truthful? They have nothing to gain from it. Okay. They told me under hypnosis that they've been around for, listen to this, their civilization, according to what I was told, is 5 million years older than ours. As a human race, we're barely about 150,000 years old.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
5 million years.
I think too, though. I think too we have to factor in the concept that civilizations have risen and fallen and risen and fallen. We only know about so many civilizations that have risen and fallen. We don't know about the precursor civilizations that they had wrote about, but barely a lot of that text has survived or is maintained in our society as it is today. If I had to take a guess, I would say humanity is very old. We just go through changes. We go through consistent changes in how we move. A lot of times we'll experience catastrophic events that happen on the planet Earth. And once that happens, a lot of your civilizations and the history is destroyed. Unless you can find, some underground cache of knowledge, usually it's destroyed. So I think that our civilization as a whole is a lot older. I think our civilization dates back very, very far. We just only have the basic tools and the basic knowledge to go back so many hundred thousands of years. Whereas I think it's a very old civilization. That's just my opinion. Take it for that. Just stuff that I've read in different religious texts and some of my history books that I have back there. So.
Well, I agree with you on that. I like civilizations, supposedly Lemuria, Mu, and Atlantis. Okay, for instance. Yeah. Okay, there's a theory that the Mediterranean basin was once fertile and it was devoid of water. Mm-hmm. Where the Straits of Gibraltar was also connected to Africa, and keeping the Atlantic Ocean out. So there's been speculation and theories to the fact that maybe Atlantis existed in the Mediterranean. Okay, that were when there's somehow that you've heard of the stories of the Great Flood. That somehow that the waters opened up to the Atlantic Ocean and drowned it out. Whatever civilization was in that fertile basin, which is now the Mediterranean Sea. Okay. I know about, look, they found those temples supposedly off the coast of Japan. Okay. Underwater.
Yep.
Okay. What about the roadways down in the Caribbean? Okay.
Yeah.
Underwater. Okay. So.
Bimini and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%.
We also have to, if you look at the eye of the Sahara, there's that too. There's also Antarctica. Supposedly Antarctica was a lush jungle paradise, and I think the Perry Reese map shows Antarctica being a lush jungle paradise. So, like I said, and not to be disrespectful or interrupt you, I just like to put out that I think we're a lot older than a lot of people say we are. I don't think we're this new fledgling thing. I think we've been around a very long time. I just think we go through changes. We go through different species changes, if you will, too. Because human beings back in the flood era looked a lot different than human beings look today in our current era. And so, mankind was a lot taller. We have records of giants. We have records of these beings, these cryptids, as a lot of people call them, existing back then. I mean, heck, if you go back so many years, you'll see that we had the dodo. So to think that there weren't other things running around at that time that don't exist today, and given things like I have a theory that there's two Earths. We have the one that's post industrialization that we all live in today with our factories and our cell phone towers and things like that. We have pre industrialization, which was before your cell towers, which is before your factories, before the pollution, before everything else. That's when a lot of your fey folk, your beings, or things like that were able to thrive, were able to exist. But once you start polluting the air that we all breathe, or once you start putting up these cell towers that interfere with different like insects and things like that in their pathways, you're going to start destroying things. And so, I like I said before, I believe that we have the pre-industrialization, which flourished. It was a different time, and then post, which we live in today. So just putting that out there. Feel free to do research on that. I don't have 100% theory in that or 100% fact in that. It's a lot of theory and conjecture, but it's just something that I like to kind of dwell on when I'm reading different historical outlooks.
Well, I agree with you. And if you look into the ancient Indian text, okay, they
Mhm.
talk about uh, flying vimanas. They call them
Oh yeah,
vimanas.
yeah, the Vimanas, yeah,
And how they had gods that came down, supposed everything. See, back then, mankind, early man didn't have the words to describe
right.
a flying saucer. It was a shield. Okay,
Mhm.
same thing with Ezekiel's chariot. Chariot.
Yeah,
Okay, think of this nature. The Japanese, there's a story about a woman coming out of the sea in a craft.
yeah, we
Okay,
did this. It crash landed, or they found it floating in the waters, and it landed on an island, and they got out to go investigate, and they ended up putting her back out to sea, and she ended up going off somewhere else. That's
right.
interesting because you're the only other person that's ever brought that up to me. I had to research that and find it myself, but you're the only other person that I've talked to that knows about that. Very interesting.
Well, well, here's the thing too. Like I said, so I believe, like I said, there's more than one race visiting the Earth. You've heard about
Mhm.
the reptilians. You've heard about the Greys.
The
You've heard about the
Nordics.
Nordiques.
Yep.
Okay, all,
Yep.
all these different. And there's battles supposedly taking place. Okay, in the air. So
Yeah.
there might be there's several different races vying for whatever. I don't know. I don't want to use the word control, but I think basically the Earth is an experimental. It's an experiment. It's been going on for a long time. I
Right.
do believe, and I know a lot of religious people are going to go against me right now when I say this. I believe that we were seeded here. Okay. I believe that our DNA has been altered over a period of time. I believe that's still going on. Uh, I mean, I know it sounds crazy and stuff, but look, I think there's 3% of the world's population has Neanderthal DNA in them.
Mhm.
3%, which means the Neanderthals and Cro-Magnon man interbred. Okay. But, now listen to this. Now, Neanderthals were hardier and stronger than we were. They're often portrayed as stupid, lumbering beasts. They're not.
Right.
They buried their dead. They had religious rites. Okay. They had
Right.
things of this nature. But being they were much hardier than us, why did they disappear?
Right.
Why did they disappear? Okay, maybe because they were made to disappear.
Yeah.
Okay, now we talked about the Anunnaki. Supposedly, I think it was seven rulers of the Anunnaki over what, a period of several 100,000
Yeah.
years. Very
The
extremely
Sumerian
long lived.
the Sumerian Kings list, as it's
Right,
called. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
The Chinese talk about one that came from came from the heaven that ruled them for many years. Okay,
We can't
then you
forget
have
about
the
Akhenaten too. Akhenaten was another
I,
one. He didn't
I was
he
just
didn't look like anybody. He came down, and he set up actually a whole different religious process as to where the Egyptians were worshiping, they had polytheism. He came down and gave them monotheism, and they just worshiped the sun. So that's
right.
another one in history to bring that up, to bring that around here, is we have the Chinese emperor that supposedly was not of this earth. Akhenaten was not of this earth, supposedly. And you have a couple other rulers that were not of this earth. You know, you have Mithras from Zoroastrianism that supposedly rode around on a flaming chariot and struck people down that weren't good. So you have all of these different historical aspects of these sort of otherworldly beings that existed. And to go off a point of yours, yeah, I don't think Neanderthals are these big dumb creatures as everybody likes to say. I think that's a way to sort of muddle history so you don't go too far back, you don't ask too many questions, and then you know cement in the whole like educational aspect of it, of like, well, if you don't believe, we're going to laugh you out of the building, because that's what society is, you know. And I want to bring something up. You talked earlier, I don't know if we were talking before or we talked about this on the show here. You talked about people ridiculing it, you know, people ridiculing it. Wasn't but 20 years ago that we couldn't talk about this kind of stuff, you know, because I've always been fascinated by it. There's not been a time where I've been like, you know, ghosts and cryptids and UFOs didn't fascinate me. I was a child of probably 6 or 7 when I first saw they have a Time Life Western series, and I remember seeing a dead body, and they would prop these bodies up in the Old West to show two things. One, we caught the outlaw. He's dead. You don't got to worry about it. You don't got to go, you know, you ain't got to stress about it anymore. And two, so you don't walk down that path. This is what's going to happen to you if you keep going this route. And so that furthered my interest. And then I started getting into the idea of spiritualism, which was really big around, you know, the early 1900s, the Americana era, where they would have, you know, people doing seances and people coming in and being able to talk to the dead, mediums and such. And so it grew from there. And but back then you couldn't really talk about that kind of stuff because people thought you were off your rocker. A lot of people thought you were crazy. My grandmother saw a UFO when she was a little girl crossing over a field. She saw it kind of land and then take off and go again. So the fact that we can talk about it today is great. But on that flip side, you know, everybody's talking about it. So it's hard to find your nuggets of truth in a sea that's, you know, oversaturated with a bunch of people telling stories, some for sensationalism, some just for pure entertainment value so they can have their 15 minutes of fame. And I have to
Well,
say, you know, talking to you, I don't get that from you. I don't get you know, the 15 minutes of fame aspect. When you talk to me, it's like you're talking to, you know, I could see it in the eyes. These are legit things that have happened to you.
well, here's the thing. Like I said to you before that we started on the
Mhm.
podcast, I have I don't mind. Look, if you want to write a book about UFOs or Bigfoot or whatever, I don't have a problem with that.
Mhm.
But I tell this to people all the time. I'm an administrator in 5 different groups, and they call me a group expert. Look, I call myself an explorer of the unknown because I'm no expert on anything. I'm
Same.
an expert. I'm an experiencer. Yes, there are no experts. Anybody gets
No.
out there and tells you they're an expert, lying to you, and they're
Yep.
delusional.
Yep.
Because if you were an expert, you could tell me definitively what something is. I
Yep.
don't know. For everything I've seen, for everything I think I know, there's another rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's how it always
and
is.
I remember in the '60s we had. I remember there were UFO sightings back then as well. Of course, way back in the history, but there were people putting like they were saying they were from Venus and they were flying to Venus. Again, my hobby is astronomy. If you know anything about Venus, the atmospheric pressure there would kill you. So would
Yeah.
it would kill you. Okay, there's no way you could go there. I mean, it's just ridiculous some of this stuff. But what it did, it made us a laughing stock to the established scientific community. For anybody who knows anything about space, let me tell you something. Okay, we're one little planet in the golden zone around the third planet around our sun. Our sun is a medium to small size star. Sol is our star. Okay. There are stars a million times bigger than ours.
Yep.
Okay. There are exoplanets being discovered by the thousands now. Okay. There's one that's about 2.5 times the size of Earth. Okay. Which means the gravitational pull will be much greater. Okay.
Mhm.
Human beings, listen, if you were to go live on, say you were born on Mars, okay, 1/3 the gravitational pull. You couldn't really walk on Earth.
Right.
Think about it. You would
Right.
collapse because your body, your muscles wouldn't be able to support your weight. Okay. Conversely, if you were to go to Jupiter, you couldn't stand up. If you could stand on
Right.
the planet's surface, it's not. You
Fall
couldn't
right
stand on
through.
there.
Yeah.
They believe that this. I think they the center of Jupiter is a giant diamond. But anyhow, that's another story. But the thing is, what I'm getting at is that look, I got into this not for the glory or the fame. Okay, there are people who do this all the time and try to make a buck off the subject. They don't want the Bigfoot issue solved because that would put them out of business, wouldn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
They don't want the UFO business solved because it would put them out of business. Okay. But I get sick and tired of this stuff because there's so many people and so many groups doing this stuff now.
Yeah.
It's laughable. Okay. I consider myself a serious investigator. I look at all the angles. I try to
Yeah.
figure everything out. Let me give you, for instance, I got a call one time. There was a guy outside of Waynesburg off of Route 79 South, claimed he was an abductee. So I went with my co-investigator, again, Devin. We go down to his house and stuff. First thing he lives up on a hillside. First thing he tells us is that his wife left him. Okay, well, that happens. But all over his walls, he has pictures drawn of UFOs, flying saucers of all kinds of, crazy stuff. So then he starts talking like really out there. So I figured I was going to do something little not quite kosher. I asked to use his bathroom. So I go into his bathroom. I open up the medicine cabinet. He's got all kind of psychotropics in his cupboard.
Ah.
Okay. So anyhow, we went along with it for a while. We wanted him to show where this UFO supposedly landed and taken him. He took us to about 10 different places. Listen, you're going to know where you were. Okay.
Yeah.
So I dismissed it as he's crazy. He's a hoaxer. Okay. I've talked to a lot of people who hoax stuff. Okay. They misidentified something in the sky. Okay. I mean, it happens. Okay. It does happen. But I'm not the kind of guy that's going to take it. I have an open mind, but I'm skeptical at the same time. Like I said, I've been doing this for 56 years. There's nobody else I know that's been doing it as long as I have overall.
Right. Right.
And nobody's had as many cases they've been on. I'm not bragging about it. Okay.
Right.
People have asked me to write books about it. I was going to do it for a while. And I said, you know what? I don't have the time. If I sit around writing books, I can't get out there and do this stuff. Okay. But listen, their aliens are here. They're among us. They've been influencing our culture, our economy, everything in the world for God knows how long. Okay.
Right.
And going back to beyond what you said about the earlier civilizations, they probably caused the Great Flood of Gilgamesh, the flood that Noah talks about. Okay. I mean, other cultures around the world talk about this giant flood.
Yeah.
You talked about Antarctica being supposedly a lush place to live at one time, and it
Yeah.
was. It was. Obviously, it's under 2 to 3 miles of ice right now. Okay, and just so you know, the Russians they drilled down until there's an underground lake there, and they found all kind of organisms which we've never been exposed to on this planet. Man hasn't. God help us if there's any kind of virus down here that comes out we have no immunity for. It'll wipe us out.
Right.
So, but anyhow, like I said, having seen UFOs a number of times, again, with multiple witnesses, okay, I have a tendency to go in with an open mind, but I check everything out. I look for things like soil samples. By the way, the soil there, we took pictures of the soil. I have some other pictures. Evelyn Sherman and I went down I'd say it was about 3 weeks later. We get a call by Mingo Park. There's a horse boarding place down there. And the lady claims that there's a UFO that was landed on her ground. Now, there's high tension towers that we looked on topographical maps that led all the way back to that ridge about 16, 17 miles away. So could have been the same UFO that landed on the ground. All her cats disappeared, which is typical in these cases. Now, I walked into the center of this circle, which is, listen to this, exactly 50 feet in diameter. The ground was gray. I got pictures of this too. Now, here's a question I have to ask of you.
Okay.
Our measurement system is based on 12 inches equal a foot, right?
Right.
And 10 inches, okay? 10 inches, 10 inches, 10, it makes 100, okay? All the way up. Why would a UFO have exactly 50 feet? Why not 51 feet? Why not 49 and a half feet? Why exactly 50 feet? Okay? That kind of boggles my mind. Now, there's also crop circles down there. And let me give you a little hint how you know it's a real crop circle. A lot of people fake them. That's true. Those guys in England claimed all those ones that were over there, they did. No, they didn't. They did a few. A real crop circle, if you walk into a real crop circle with the tape recorder, you'll hear a high-pitched whistling sound. The plants are not broken, they're melted. Okay? That's two ways you know they're real. Okay? Why are they making crop circles? Is that some kind of message they're using? I don't know. Like I said, there's more questions than answers to this thing. Okay? Look, having been an abductee, and by the way, I want to tell you something. When I was taken, okay, that night, what I remember when we saw those three oblong things at about 500 feet away, they weren't over there. They were behind us, behind some trees. I remember under hypnosis, as does Devin, being taken by, there was 4 of them. We walked up, the craft was behind these trees in a field, okay, across from the cemetery. It's called the Old West Church, okay? Anyhow, it's the only outdoor church and cemetery. It's built right in the cemetery. There's pews and everything out in this cemetery. I've never seen anything like this before. Anyhow, they took us, I remember they had 3 of them with Devin because he's so big, 1 on either side and 1 behind him. And they had 2 with me. I remember as we walked in, you could see like a wall. So it went straight in like this. Then it went to the right, up some steps into a cupola up top. When I went up, I managed to lift my hand up and touch the side of the craft. And it looked like laminate, layers of laminate like this. And it felt warm to the touch. The ramp that I walked on sounded like I want to say wood, but it wasn't wood because it had that same kind of sound. We went up these narrow steps up into this cupola, and there was a bench built into the wall. It looked like plastic, but it wasn't plastic. I don't know what it was made out of. They made Devin sit there, and they were mad at me for bringing Devin. Okay? They had us there. They did what the typical things they talk about doing. They took blood samples, the DNA samples, et cetera, et cetera. They had me laying on like a raised, not a gurney, but like a raised platform that was solid. Above me was like a big black circle. And as I looked up, I could see the ground receding below me. I don't know how to explain it. There were 2 seats up forward, and the seats were tiny. I couldn't fit my butt into them at all. I mean, they were really tiny. They were made for like children's size. And they were also the same material. And on either side of those seats looks like joysticks. Now, what's strange about that is when Travis Walton mentioned his abduction, which I believe actually happened, he talked about these same type of seats with joysticks in them as well. But I remember the craft lifting up like this, and I'm looking up and seeing the ground recede underneath me. So that's about all I remember of that. But before they put me back, they said, now listen to this, you are one of the chosen. Not the chosen, one of the chosen, one of the, what they said, good army. Well, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. To this day, I don't know what that means. And I said the same thing between 2 hypno-regressionists. Okay? It's on tape. I mean, I'll send you a copy of the tapes if you want.
Right,
to.
please. Yeah, please. Definitely.
But, I mean, to hear this stuff, I know it sounds crazy, and I know some of your viewers are going to say, this guy's a nutcase. Well, look, if I thought I really don't care if you believe me or not. But for those of you out there who've had similar experiences, you know what I'm talking about. But you're not going to see anything unless you go out there and you look. I spent thousands of hours all over the place. You know, I always carry a camera. I always carry something to record things. I have right in my vehicle right now, I have one of those little camcorders you put on the window. So if something happens to me, it's something recording, okay? My wife is afraid if I go out by myself, I'm not going to come back. At this point in my life, I figure it this way. I fought COVID 3 times, cancer for 8.5 years, blood clots, which nearly took me out 2 years ago. If I were meant to die, I'd be dead already. And if I die knowing, great, I die knowing. But I have to get out there and look. I need to know, just like you do. You're the new generation. Yeah. You're the new generation of this. You got to keep your podcast real. You got to keep it real. You do good research. I told you that earlier. You do really good research. And that's good too, because a lot of podcasters don't. They get up there and they just talk and talk and talk, and that's about it. I know I jumped around quite a bit tonight about things, but I wanted to explain I want to explain to your viewers that abductions do happen. There's at least 600 happen every night. Okay? They can happen anywhere. They can happen in a rural area out in the country. They can happen in the city. There were cases in New York City where people were taken right out of their apartment buildings. In New York City, for crying out loud, one of the biggest city in this country. Okay, millions of people taken right out of there. Okay, there have been people in the military taken. Okay, there's things going on that we don't know about. We can only surmise what's going on. The other thing I want to say is this. As I told you, my hobby is astronomy.
Right.
You know that the moon is the biggest satellite compared to the size of its sister world, compared to any other planet in our solar system? It's a quarter of the size of the Earth. There is no other moon in this solar system with its parent body where it even approaches that size. They're all much smaller. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to remind you, you probably heard about this. During one of the Apollo missions, when they dropped the lander back on the moon, it vibrated the moon for hours. That indicates a hollow sphere. Okay. Now, without the moon, we wouldn't have our seasons like we do now. The tides would run
Right.
amok and everything else. Okay.
Right.
Now, I know this is going to sound way off the wall here, people, but I got to tell you this. I think the moon is either an artificial satellite brought here, because some Native Americans say it was, and way back in history, say it wasn't here. It was brought here. It's either a hollowed out asteroid, or a moon rather, or it's an artificial sphere covered by dust that was accumulated as it traveled through the cosmos.
Right.
Now, I do believe if I were an alien race and I didn't want to deal with the savages that are on Earth, which we do have now. I mean, human beings call themselves civilized. You and I know better. Okay. We're the only species that preys upon themselves. Okay. Kills themselves. Okay. We have the means to do that too, by the way.
Right.
But the thing is this: if I were an alien species, wanted to observe the Earth and have a safe base, there'd be two places I'd do it from: the moon or the sea.
Right. Yeah. Because the sea, we don't even know of like half of what's in there. Like we can't even go fully down. You have instances of crafts actually going into the water and going so far down that people can't even follow them because the pressure that you would go down as humans, we can't go that far because basically our
We'd
heads
explode.
would explode more or less.
Well, it wouldn't explode. We'd implode. But the Challenger Deep in the Marianas Trench is 7 miles deep. That's about 2 miles taller than Mount Everest. Okay, the pressure there is incredible. Okay, but there are living things down there too. Okay, you have
Right.
a reason things can live down in the ocean like fish and things, because the water goes through their body. We're a closed environment. Our bodies are closed. So you're right. We wouldn't be explode. We'd implode. We'd
Right.
be crushed.
Right.
Okay. So we can't go down. There's only been, I think, 3 people in history that's ever gone down deep at all. And one of them was Jacques Cousteau in the Beth escape, Trieste. Okay. And I think his son went down there too, if I'm not mistaken. Jacques Cousteau passed away, but his son still does this stuff.
Right.
So now USOs are all over the place. We've had submarine commanders talking about close calls with UFOs traveling, listen to this, at Mach speeds under the water.
Mm-hmm.
How is that possible? So what they're doing, my theory is they can push aside somehow, by some mechanism, they push aside the water molecules so they can travel as freely through that as they do through the air. They're called transmedium craft. They can go into space, they can go into the atmosphere, they can go into the ocean. They're transmedium. Okay. There's been a lot of cases of this. Ships, I mean, recently off of San Diego, they were following ships out there. Okay. Our Navy. Okay. So yeah, they're everywhere. And so, especially off of Catalina Island, by the way, there's been a lot of sightings off Catalina Island. Okay. Around Mount St. Helens before it erupted. And what's really I find unusual, I just read of an account where supposedly a UFO was seen going in and coming out of a volcano, an active volcano. Unbelievable. If they have that kind of technology, then nothing can affect them. What chance do we have? Our best fighter jets can't do anything with them. Okay.
Right.
I'm sure you know of the cases where they supposedly turned on our Nike missile bases, our ICBM bases. They turned on they were going to launch, and they shot them off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I could go on and on and on. I talked to you all night about this stuff, but I'm not trying to burn you out. But
No, you're fine.
But like I said, I mean, look. Oh, the other thing I want to say is that the reason, I didn't really want to get too much into this, but the reason I got into the Bigfoot research too, and it seems to be the biggest thing right lately. But
Right.
it, I've talked to people who've actually seen supposedly a Bigfoot type creature, a large humanoid type creature in close proximity to a hovering UFO, a landed UFO, or going into or coming out of a UFO. What's the connection there? Now, I'm going to tell you what I think. I don't think that Bigfoot is a descendant of Gigantopithecus or Denisovan. You know what a Denisovan is, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So I don't think it's that. What I think it is, I think it was brought here. I think its home world is very similar to the Pacific Northwest. I think they're highly intelligent, sentient creatures. The one I saw with 42 witnesses looked at me, could have ripped my. I'm a big guy. They could have ripped my arms and legs off and beat me to death with a bloody end,
Oh yeah.
but it didn't do it. Primates don't have eye shine. This thing did. They're a sentient creature. They're a sentient being. I did a Mothman investigation a couple years ago with my wife. It's the second one I did. I actually met John Keel many years ago in New York, LaGuardia Airport, and he told me that there was a lot of UFO sightings around that time as well, by the McClintock Preserve and around that area, the bunker area, which I went into, by the way. So I talked to Linda Sigmund, who said in her case that he saw the Mothman, that the sky opened up and a UFO appeared and this thing came out of it. So yeah, there's something going on. I mean, look, I can't remember who said it, but they say there's stranger things in heaven and earth than you can imagine, and there are. Okay.
Right.
You have some questions? I know you do.
Um, I first want to get into I disagree with you somewhat on what I think Bigfoot is, and respectfully so. I
That's
think
fine.
Bigfoot I think Bigfoot is just the when I said before about pre and post industrialization era things, right? I think Bigfoot is the pre industrialization era of something that has existed long before um, recorded human history. It's along the same lines as a lot of your what they would deem to be mythological creatures. I think a lot of the mythological creatures that we talk about, that we see, um, have existed for a very long time. You have tales of the Naga in Southeast Asia, the serpent people, as I like to call them. You have a lot of tales of them regarding into that. So for me, Bigfoot, I don't think was brought here. I think Bigfoot is just something that has always been here. It's just part of who we are as a people. As a lot of times when it comes to tales around the campfire, this is something that's been around for a very long time. You could almost relate this to sort of a minotaur type creature. Something that is just has existed long before. And I think that when you had mankind sort of come in to his own and start to populate more and more areas and expand, you are pushing out these creatures, because you notice a lot of the reports, they don't like to be bothered, they don't like to be messed with, they don't like to be harassed. They don't do the harassing, but if you get close to their young, or you get close to their buildings or their area, they tend to get more hostile. They have a group sort of conscious. The Native Americans have talked about building bridges with them. They've talked about fighting off the Europeans with them. They've talked about trading with them. So I think, like I said, I think this is something that has existed long before. Now, the UFO aspect of why they would essentially um, be with UFOs is maybe in some of these different alien species or these alien races, they've come to sort of know them. They've sort of come to talk to them, as it were. I think that right there is sort of a an instance. Now, could some of them, because there's so many different species of Bigfoot that we know about today. You have your skunk apes, you have your actual Bigfoot, you have different variations on said Bigfoot. That's not to say that there couldn't have been maybe one or two that were from somewhere else, but I think for the most part, I think they've existed long before um, we've stepped foot in certain areas. And that's going off the concept that mankind has risen and fallen and risen and fallen and risen and fallen multiple times. And that's just
Well,
one instance.
I agree with. I mean, I can agree with that. I mean, it's another theory. Like I said, mine's a theory. I'm not saying I have the definitive answers because I
Oh,
don't.
same.
But I mean, it's interesting. Like I said, because having done this for long, I mean, I've been on over 500 Bigfoot cases in my life. Okay,
Right.
not even within that 5,000. But the thing is I don't know what to make of them. I know they're
Right.
intelligent. They're that much I could tell you. They're omnivores because I saw the teeth, I saw the molars and the canines. So that tells me they're omnivores. But the thing, what I just don't understand it. But like I said, so that's why, like I said, when people call themselves experts and are writing definitive books on whatever it is, that's nonsense. These are all theories. It's all speculation. We don't know.
Right.
If we knew, there
Right.
would be no speculation. I do say this about that though. I don't want to see anybody going out there and trying to kill one. As you
Right.
know, let me ask you hypothetically. Say you went out to the woods and you saw a grizzly bear and you're in Yellowstone Park and you shot it and you wounded it. Okay. Now it can't really hunt like it used to. So you managed to get away, but somebody else comes into the Yellowstone Park and there's this wounded grizzly bear running around.
Right.
What do you think's going to happen? It's going to kill somebody.
Yeah, 100%. If you get too close to it, a wounded animal, it's gonna it's
That's
gonna
right.
lash out. Yeah.
Right. And like one of my friends, Bill, Bill Rigby.
Oh
I
yeah.
told Bill, he's in the hospital, but I talked to him the other day. I said, you know what, Bill? I said, what's really funny is all these so-called Bigfoot investigators go out in the woods, and I says, and the normal science community they want to believe in the plaster cast. They don't want to believe in all that. They don't even want to believe in hair samples, even though I got some hair samples, by the way. They don't want to believe in none of that. Short of a body, they may not even believe that. Okay. But the thing is, so what are you going to do if you do run into a Bigfoot? You're going to tackle him? You're not going to tackle him. Okay.
No.
I mean, like I said, I've seen him 4 times. So, I mean, the smallest one's between 5 and 6 foot. There was 2 of them. There was 13 people saw that following me out of the woods. The other one was 8 foot tall. And then the big one with all those other witnesses was about 10 feet tall. So I wouldn't have had no chance against this thing whatsoever. I'm not even sure you could kill it with a gun, short of a cannon maybe. But I don't want to
Right.
see a bunch of people out there doing these type of investigations. I don't care if it's Bigfoot or UFOs. We're packing heavy duty artillery. You're not out there to kill anything. You're out there to learn. Okay. And I mean, look, I know you can take bear spray if there's bears out in the woods and things like, but if you stay away from a mama bear with cubs, you'll be fine. You stay away from a grizzly, you know how what grizzlies do. Stay away from them. Okay. But I get sick and tired of these people going out into the woods or doing these investigations. They have no clue what they're doing. They do really bad investigations. They don't document anything. Okay, so I don't know what to say about it, but they're going to continue. Their people are going to continue to do this. That's why, Robert, I only take certain people with me when I go out to the woods.
Right.
Most of the time now, I go by myself, or I take my wife. But look, I don't have all the answers. I don't pretend to have all the answers. I entertain all theories. You entertain mine, I entertain yours. There's a lot of theories of what these things are, what aliens are, or whatever. I can tell you from my own experience, it wasn't pleasant. I don't believe they're here to help. I believe they're here to do what they do, which is basically they do control. They control, they manipulate, they do things of this nature, and they lie. I believe there's more than one race of them on, visiting us. They have been for, like you said, millennia. I mean, the Native Americans called them the Star People. Okay, they came from the stars. The Dogon people. Remember the Dogon people in Africa? Yeah. Same thing. Okay, the Egyptians. Okay, you were talking about monotheism when Akhenaten brought in monotheism. Yeah, of course. So yeah, I mean exactly. So I just don't know. I'm gonna die not knowing. Okay, you might get the answers. Now, do I believe the government's ever going to tell you anything? Unless one lands in the middle of a football game in a stadium and they come out and say, take us to your leader. And even then,
Nah.
people, are going to deny it. Okay.
Yeah. Even
So
then, and yeah, the government's definitely not going to. I mean, if we go back and we look at the Majestic 12, or we look at Eisenhower, um,
oh yeah, with the
they're
meetings.
they're they're in conjunction with the government. Eisenhower basically said, "Go ahead and you can kidnap this, that, and the third person, right?
Right.
Just give us your technology. Let us
Well,
have
not
your
only that.
technology, and then
Well,
um,
they were also supposed to give him a list of the people they took, and they never did.
never.
Okay.
No, they didn't.
And there was a
Um,
deal. The deal was the Nordiques came first, and they wanted us to get rid of our nuclear weaponry. Okay. I mean, and this is the time where supposedly Eisenhower. I remember that. I remember Eisenhower. I grew up in that era. I remember
right.
Eisenhower said no, and they said we're not going to give you any technology unless you get rid of your nuclear capability.
Yep.
Now, of course, this is all speculation. We don't know for sure if that actually
Right.
happened or not, but it's the story, and it makes an interesting story. It's something to look into. The flights over Washington D.C. There were what 6 or 7 UFOs. They scrambled jets. This is a fact. Okay. Then there was the Battle of Los Angeles. Remember that?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So they shot at it. They probably hit whatever it was, but it didn't bring it down. That's during the war, Second World War. The Foo Fighters, the same thing. You've heard of Jesse Marcel, okay,
Yeah.
involved in the Roswell thing, and Captain Martell, who was killed pursuing a UFO. I mean, look, we could go on and on and on. Neil Armstrong claims that there was somebody else on the moon when they were up there. They cut the mic off from NASA.
Right.
Okay,
Yep.
he came forward later on to say there was somebody else up there. They were there. So yeah, I look. Too many credible people. I don't care. Listen, if there's a million claims of UFO aliens, and only a small percentage is true, then they exist, right?
Right. Yeah. I've said it before. I've said, you know, if I could see if one or two people said it, like one or two people said, "Hey, we saw a UFO." Okay, you could write that off. You could easily write that off. You say, "Ah, you're crazy," right? But when you have, thousands upon thousands, seeing them in different countries all across the world, you got to start taking note. You got to start wondering, and then when you have, instances of things where uh, it could only be something of that nature, i.e., the Nazca lines. Why would you
Right,
build the Nazca lines if not for something in the air to see? And back then, they didn't have planes and hot air balloons and things like that. So who did they build those for? The giant ant. That's
right,
one of the known aspects of that. Also, we forget too that so many different people have come forward about their abduction cases. And while yes, there are some folks out there that are nuttier than a squirrel. There are people out there that just want their 15 minutes of fame. We've seen that. We remember the Alien Autopsy TV show. They want their little 15 minutes of fame out there. Then you have other folks who this is really happening, and by a hypnotic regression, they bring this kind of stuff forth, and they kind of say, hey, you know what? I got abducted. I remember you asking me if I had lost blocks of time because I saw that UFO back during the pandemic in 2020. I was sitting outside. I looked up and I saw a what looked like Flight of the Navigator sunflower seed shaped UFO, and I saw it in a blink of an eye, it moved, and I saw it. It's probably maybe about that far apart from here to here. Now, obviously, the sky it's a lot further apart than that. I couldn't tell. But 2 weeks later, I saw the same thing, the exact same thing, did the exact same thing. So I saw the UFO again, and then it disappeared and then reappeared a little further on. Now, whether that is an alien or a UFO, whether that's our government, because our government has technology that's 50 years ahead of what we have now, 25 to 50 years ahead of what we have now.
Oh, I think actually. Well, I don't know if you know who this is, but there was a colonel named Corso, and he was supposedly he was in the army. This is back during the Roswell area. He was supposedly given certain items from the crash Roswell site to look into and try to reverse
Right.
engineer. One of the things supposedly was fiber optics. There was also some type of light, like the one in uh, what's the one movie with Will Smith, Men in Black,
Yeah. Yeah.
to make you forget things and things of this nature. Here comes my wife, by the way. You'll get to meet her. She's coming
Okay.
in. So yeah. But like I said, so there's a lot going on about this stuff. Okay. So
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say.
Well, we're definitely gonna have to get you back on the show again, so you can sit down and talk to my co-hosts, because usually there's two of us here. There's two other guys that usually join me for this adventure. Um, but it was a blast having you on. I definitely like to do more conversating about this. I definitely like to get a team together to share this information and knowledge with, because I'm not about hoarding knowledge. I want to get it out there. I have stuff that I want to share with people. That's why I like speaking so much. That's why I like speaking at these engagements, because it allows me to get the information that I've learned out to the people, because I don't believe in hoarding knowledge. I don't think it does us any good to sit on it, because I think one way, right? If I can have somebody and I've had people at these conventions come up to me and say, "Hey, Robert, have you thought about this? Or did you consider this case?" And so boom, there you go. There's a whole nother perspective that I have now not I can use to further my research. So I definitely like to get a team together, including you and a couple other people, and start investigating this a little bit further. I think that'd be something that I've been wanting to do for a long time.
Well, how about I do this? How about okay, we don't have to do a podcast tomorrow, but are you free to talk tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll be free at some point. Yes, sir. I mean, I work, but once I get off work, I'll be free.
I'll give you a call tomorrow evening.
All right. Yeah, let's do it. Let's
All right, buddy.
definitely do it.
Care.
So I will we'll reconvene. I want to thank John Stasko for being on. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. You are very much an awesome person, and we will catch up with you later on. So have a good night, John, and take care of yourself.
You too, buddy. Take care. God
Thank
bless.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, folks, there you go. There was this Uncanny Earth tonight. I had a blast. I hope you guys had a blast as well. Our guest, John Stasko, was amazing. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. We will be back next week with another episode. I want to dedicate this episode to our good friend, James Bryan. He passed away recently due to some complications. And we miss him. So we're going to go to some calling hours on Friday to pay our respects to Mr. James Bryan. So please, his family, definitely need your prayers and good stuff. So, all right, y'all. From me and the team, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We'll see you folks next week. We'll be discussing the Ark of the Covenant. Take care, guys. Later.